How you doing, Dave?
Oh, I'm good. I'm good, Stephen.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
it's been a busy few days. I got contacted by the lawyer just yesterday for the that legal stuff,
right.
and he asked me to be one of the lead clients for it, one of the first guys they run through. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I had the same conversation as well.
oh, excellent.
Yeah, and what's really interesting is I got. I think I'm not sure if I was talking to you about this or not, but I actually got my military med docs, and I sent them down to Dr. Remington Nevin down at the Queenism Foundation. And
Yep.
then I got my civilian docs as well since I've left the military, sent them down. One of the things that he did comment on, and that was Doc Nevin, is that it was probably one of the most well documented med files out of that era. So that could be a precedent setting there as well, I think.
Yep.
Anyways, the reason I want to have this conversation with you and record it is because, for the past several years, I mean, a lot of what you've been saying although I knew about methylquin being the root of many of my problems, I never realized the extent of my problems that it actually represented, right? So it was
Yep.
through your research and your involvement that opened up that the inflammation in my body, my clumsiness, and several other things that are wrong with me, all come into and under that umbrella of methylquin. So I really wanted to get your take on all this stuff, where it began, what drove you, that kind of stuff, and then we can get this out to other people.
Yeah. Well, where it started was actually about 3.5 years ago with the Sheila Pratt's article she did in the Edmonton newspaper. Someone handed it to me. I read it, and it was just like, okay, you fuckers, you poisoned me. And then it just, it went from there. I got really angry, and John Dow was mentioned in the article, and I reached out to him, and actually John started me down this road because he made the point of, well, write down what you think your experience is related to methylquin. And I actually started writing, and as I was writing, it was just everything was just started clicking in place. It's like, okay, I was court-martialed and kicked out. Okay, yeah.
Can you go back to that court-martial and kicked out? What happened? What was the trigger that created?
Well, there's a couple of things what was going on with that resulted in the court-martial, but the root one being the heavy alcohol use to manage the methylquin poisoning symptoms. Like, I was using it for sleep and managing the daily anxiety.
Right. So I just wanted to draw, you not only did Somalia, you also did Rwanda, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Now,
yes.
And so that was like a double dose. When you first got out of Somalia, like I was crippled. Within 2 years, I was, I was serious psychiatric problems, time and place, hallucinations, you name it. Did you have what symptoms did you have first following Somalia, and then what came after in Rwanda?
Somalia was, I had seizures. Right off the first pill, I started to have seizures. And what they were my vision would go black and I would see stars, and it would last for a few seconds. But then I'd be dizzy and disorientated afterwards for quite some time. Those increased in frequency as I was on the drug, and they reduced in frequency when I came off the drug. And those actual seizures persisted up until just a few years ago when I started doing the Loretta neurofeedback. For whatever reason, that seemed to have stopped them from happening. I don't understand it, but that. Neuropsychiatric stuff, I had one of the biggest ones that I battled from the day one was depression. I had severe depression, where the first thought in my head during when I woke up in the morning was, okay, today's the day. This is how it's going to happen. If this happens, this is what I'll do. If that happens, that is what I'll do. That was for over 20 years of my life, my morning routine. And I absolutely struggled with it. I went to kill myself several times. And each time I did, someone was looking over my shoulder, because it was literally, I don't know how it was, like Padre Allen twice, not once, but twice.
Yes,
He came right out of the.
Yeah, I was the complete opposite. I was the guy who was, would have been death by cough. You know what I mean? Like, it was just.
Yep.
There was never. That's the one of the few symptoms I never had was depression, but anxieties and stuff like that, very clear. So what happened after Rwanda? I mean, that was only a couple of years apart too.
Yeah. But let's go back to the depression and stuff, because
Okay.
it wasn't just the depression. Like, I was having difficulty with inhibition control when I was first started taking the drug. Where that little thought in your head, hey, I shouldn't do this. Yeah.
Never had that.
Yeah. And anger. Oh my God, I had explosive anger.
Yeah.
Like crazy anger. I went from the mellow, laid back guy to this raging, insane individual that would just lose his shit over the stupidest things.
I always described it as a double layer of anger. There was this, for me, it was this anger that was constant, elevated and flat, but very high. And then there was the spikes, and the rages were insane. Yep. I mean, I've described it in the past where out of that rage, with broken shoulder and tore up shoulder, I literally picked up a motorcycle and threw it. I was so freaking, I went off the road at 120.
Well, the thing with the anger with mefloquine is there's the regular stuff, like and a lot of that is related to the chronic insomnia, and and the body not functioning well and digesting what you're eating. Like and the consequences of the actually living with the mefloquine poisoning, because like you just described, picking up a motorbike and throwing it, like the rages, what we know now is those rages are most likely temporal lobe seizures, because there's a physical aspect to them. Like, I've actually watched a guy go into one of these. I actually witnessed one, and Teresa was standing right beside me, and she related to me, that's exactly what I look like when I go off. And it's my pupils fully dilate, my skin goes pale, and it's almost like I hunch over and I'm ready to pounce on someone and rip their throat out. And so when that happens, like, that's where the extreme anger would come into play. Like where you would, you said you picked up and threw a motorbike. Like I smashed every stick of furniture at one point when I was in the barracks in my room. Like, every piece of furniture was smashed. I fucking lost it. I've damaged tools. I've thrown shit. I've damaged vehicles. Like, just this, but it's uncontrollable. It's unreasonable. It's actually quite insane, like the harm that's been caused to those people around me. And it's not just, how do you put it? Like, for myself, it's like, when these rages happen, usually they're directed outwards, and the wife, the girlfriend, the kids, that they sometimes are the recipient of that. And that's it's very hard to live with the consequences of this rage, because it's very, like, literally, it's insane. It's not rational anger. It's not based in reality half the time. It's, it's, you just completely go off and you can't stop it. You can't shut your mouth and not say what you're saying.
I had a conversation recently with Courtney up at Spartan Wellness, and you're involved with
Yep.
Spartan Wellness as well. And one of the things when we were talking, because we were discussing, some of my background there and stuff like that, and one of those key things that came up was I always felt like I was an unactive participant. It's like who I am was sitting there watching all this taking place, going, I wonder what's going on. That was kind of neat. What is that? I was completely disengaged. It was like a third person or a second person video game. You know what I mean? Where you're watching this going on, and you just, you're kind of watching it, and you're along for the ride, but you're not actually participating in it mentally. It's just happening.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good way to describe it.